Well, with the rise of COVID, webinars have been a fantastic way to be able to extend knowledge to our farming community. And there was one webinar last week that had an overwhelming number of farmers attend to find out more about what is now known as a smart pivot. This is our irrigation pivots that a group of software engineers in Feilding have been tinkering away with to develop a prototype of what will be a game-changing irrigation system. Lindsay Corporation, which produces the Zimmatic brand of pivot irrigators, have gone into smart pivots, which will be a new category of mechanised irrigation that moves beyond traditional water application and into an array of other things such as crop health capabilities, diagnosing its own operating faults, how good would that be, and even launching a drone to manage crops at leaf level. This is incredible. A software engineer's dream. And of course, one of these software engineers that is behind this is Zimmatic's technology strategy advisor, Stu Bradbury. Stu, to me, it seems like, engineers' dream to tinker with this huge technology that's going around on a regular basis of what other things can you attach to it. How much fun are you having at the moment?
Yeah, the team was salivating when this got handed over to us. We've been working on pivots for the last I've been doing it for the last over 10 years, and we've come up with so many ideas, heard so many customer stories, and thought of so many things that would be cool to do that this was just the amalgamation of all of this, and everyone was into it. Yeah.
So you had that big melting pot of all farmers that have been out there utilising pivot irrigators over the past decade going, I wish it could do this and I wish it could do that, taking that feedback. And how do you start to prioritise what's practical?
With great difficulty. So one of our philosophies is customer-led innovation. So really what prioritises it is listening to our customers. So, when we're hearing something over and over and over and we can see massive value in doing something, well, then that'll creep up towards the top of our priority list. So we'll share ideas back and forth, but ultimately it comes down to our end users who steer us.
So there's an incredible technology known as variable rate irrigation. We've heard on Sarah's Country around fertigation is some of those. But when it comes to managing crops, what exactly will that look like into the future?
Yeah, so everything's the resolution at which we manage things is getting narrower and narrower. Okay, so one of the things that when we developed variable rate irrigation a little while ago now, we had this vision that you would control almost sort of to individual plant level or the requirements of different areas. And so what we're starting to see now is with technology improving, that vision's becoming more and more realizable and accessible. And with the smart pivot, what we're doing is allowing the farmer or the grower to not have to think so much and let more of the machinery and the technology do that thinking for them to enable that sort of management.
And so this is really starting to maximise efficiency of precision agriculture in general. What's the sort of technology behind sensors and those sorts of things that's on the smart pivot prototype?
Yeah, so there's a few different things. Some are sensors that are on the pivot, some are sensors that aren't even related to the pivot. So, for example, sensors on the pivot, we're working in partnership with Microsoft to develop cameras, to look at things like flat tires, sensing if a tire is going flat, looking at gearbox and motor operation, looking at trends going on in them to see if we could predict when maintenance might be required. So that's a few examples. And then there's things that aren't on the pivot at all. So, most people know about APIs now, and different companies being able to communicate with each other up in the cloud. So one company that we've got another partnership with is Tyrannus, and Tyrannus are well known for their satellite imagery and other drone imagery, that sort of thing. We can take and analyze that data to feed back to the smart pivot as well. All of this information coming to the user's hands and being presented in a way that they can actually make decisions on what they want to do with it.
But for those who aren't familiar with the benefits of pivots from an irrigation perspective, what environmental outcomes can be achieved when you can do things like detecting ponding, blocked sprinklers, and being able to turn them on and off as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because, I mean, straight away we think if there's block sprinklers, there's not going to be enough water going on crops, they're not going to grow as well. But a lot of people, I guess, don't realise, they may know, but they don't realise to the full extent that actually putting too much water on can be just as bad or worse than putting not enough water on. So if you've got areas of ponding, there's all sorts of problems that come along with that. First, you might get your machinery stuck because it starts getting bogged in these areas. But then you've also got the environmental aspects of leaching and runoff. So too much water, you're going to be leaching water through the soil profile, taking nutrients with it. You don't want to be putting nutrients on your farm, paying to put them on, and then just washing them through the soil profile. So massive environmental benefits to being able to micromanage all of these different areas underneath your irrigator, so that you get the best outcome in terms of crop, profit, and environmental aspects.
What's involved in developing the software, and Zimmatic is a large company, and working through the process of a technology development like this?
That's a big question. What's involved? To start with, I guess, as I mentioned before, there's gathering all of that information from end users, learning. One of the key things for me personally is really understanding the problem before we even start thinking about creating the solution. So we want to get it, take that ponding issue that we just talked about with leaching, etc. We want to really understand what's going on there so that we can then engineer the best possible solution. From there, it's making sure that all of our engineers know what is going to be required in that solution, and then iterating through, different ideas, different prototypes, and testing these with our customers, testing them out in the field, getting everything up to a stage where it's really robust, bulletproof before releasing it to the market. So, it takes quite a while, but perseverance. Nothing really good was really easy. You've got to put in the hard work, and it'll pay off.
I've got a couple of ideas. Can I add to your pot? What about being able to censor lambs to get out of the way as wheels move around to predict them? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely possible. And lambs is here. Lambs one thing. You don't have to look very far on the internet to find pictures of irrigators that have run over vehicles. Some have fallen on houses, all sorts of things like that. To be able to sense what's going on. If tower alignment's a big one. So if a tower goes slightly out of alignment, a pivot wheel might miss a bridge over a creek, for example, and fall into a creek. So we can sense all of these different things and make sure that either we stop the machine or we correct actions before, I'll call it, disasters.
And when we're getting into, a lot of automation on farm and AI technology in animal monitoring with collars, is there any way we can have sort of an invisible fence line that shifts brakes nice and slowly so we don't have to be out there in the wet doing it?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of companies working on things like invisible fence lines. I'm sure that it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of fun. I've often thought, every time I stare at a pivot, I think, what else could you use it for? So I'm super excited to see this. But let's finish off on how on earth does a smart pivot launch a drone?
Yeah. So one of the things that we look at is the pivot can't be everywhere in the field at once. So if, for example, using satellite imagery, we pick up an area that's on the other side of the field to where the pivot is, and we want to see what's going on in that area with a bit higher resolution, we're working on some functionality that a drone could launch, go and inspect that area, figure out, okay, what have we got going on here? Is there some ponding? Is there some sort of crop disease going on? And then feed that information back into the system. So yeah, it's that's a job that normally you might send an agronomist out to do, but people aren't available at the drop of a hat. So why not figure out a way to do it ourselves?
Absolutely. Now, of course, we talked about a webinar. It was last Thursday. What was some of the main feedback that you were getting and questions coming in that was consistent?
Probably around the webinar was really around showing the user interface, what the user would expect to do. And some of the feedback that we got was, hey, look, this is really good. How much can it do to save us thinking? So what we're thinking about really hard is how do we ease the burden, the amount of thinking that the farmer has to do so they can free up their time and effort to concentrate on other things. And the feedback we got on what people were looking at was really positive around that.
Yeah, and I understand that due to large amounts of interest and requests from those who participated or wanted to, they wanted to see more from Zimmatic, and they've scheduled another extended live stream event they want you to know more about. So we will attach the link to that webinar in the description of this podcast episode below, as well as in social, but you can check out more details about that webinar, which will be coming up, and you can ask your questions. Head to the Facebook page Zimmatic ANZ for more information as well. So thank you so much there to Stu Bradbury from Lindsay in Feilding. What an incredible innovation, certainly making change, and where this could go. The coolest thing is about not so much what the prototype is, but the ideas that will be stimulated of technologies that could plug in, and that interoperability is the direction we need to go as a country. So everything is talking to each other. Wouldn't that be bliss?